Hello, my name is Robert Grizzle. This is discussion 2 for week 3 of the online course at Liberty University. Topic for this week is the difference between freedom and liberty. In our modern world, we generally consider these two things to be synonymous. But in reality, if you look at the history of freedom and liberty, you realize that they're very different, and this difference goes all the way back to the Greek and Roman philosophers and their take on the subject. Now, the first primary source that I'd like to talk about would be Aristotle's treatise on government. In his treatise on government, Aristotle gives basically a negative definition, or what the definition of freedom is not. He talks about free men are not slaves. They're not born into slavery. They're not subject to the whims and the desires of other men. This is coming from a man who is living in a time, one of the first democracies, where every man who is free had a vote. So this is kind of, you can see how this would influence his understanding of freedom. The second primary source that I looked at was Cicero's Republic. And in Cicero's Republic, he gets more into what liberty is, and he differentiates it from free. Free men, many people can be free, but according to Cicero, the element that makes a man free is what we would call the enfranchisement. In the United States, we are constantly talking about being disenfranchised, being denied the vote. This is the kind of thing that differentiates between a free person and a person with liberty. He also points out that this is not something that is for the lower classes. This is something that really depends on you having position in society. A lowborn person is not going to have liberty. This is interesting coming from Cicero, considering that he is one of the earlier politicians of the Roman Republic, and he understood you could earn or you could buy this liberty, but to have it, for the most part, given to you, you had to be born into it. A great example of this, as a Christian that I read hundreds of thousands of times, would be Paul's story in Acts of being arrested and having the jailer want to release them quietly because he finds out that Paul is a Roman citizen. And Paul basically invokes his rights as a Roman. I was born free, he tells the man. The man says, I bought my freedom at a great price, but Paul says, I was born free. And so Paul has liberties. Paul was able to apply or to invoke his rights to be tried in Rome, as opposed to tried by some Jewish ruler off in a distant land. So you can see here this idea of the liberty being something that is more to do with your ability to have a vote, to have a say in your life politically, whereas freedom is something that is more of something you're born into. Also, another primary source that is very interesting to me and that really ties in with this last part would be the Magna Carta. As most of you know, the Magna Carta was signed in 1215. It was between King John and his nobles. His nobles he was in a state of, the best way to describe it, they were in rebellion. They did not like his plans. They did not like what he was planning on doing with his armies and stuff and so forth. So they went into rebellion. And to basically bring this rebellion under control, they forced King John to sign the Magna Carta, which not only delineated all of their rights, which included their right to veto what he said was his plans, but also gave them the right to property that they had, guaranteed their right to property. And we see this develop. This is how this concept of freedom and liberty have developed through the centuries on up until early Great Britain. And of course, even with the Magna Carta, it eventually ends up setting up the first version of the Parliament. So as you can see, freedom is a state you're born into, but liberty is something that you have under the law. This goes with this basically a form of or a result of citizenship. You are a citizen, therefore you have liberty. If you're not a citizen, you may be free, but you may not have liberty when it comes to this country that you live in. Thank you very much.